Good afternoon. I am Alexander Semyonov from Moscow, Russia. I am the president of the Association Ecology of the Unknown, which exists already for more than 30 years. Also, I am a member of the Presidium of the Academy of Geopolitical Problems. I say this now so you can understand that I am familiar with many issues related to politics, military technical development, issues of war and peace. Based on my background, I can interpret the decisions being made in the outer space field. Regarding the issue of the prevention of the placement of weapons in outer space, it must be said that at the very beginning of the discussion of the issue of military space exploration, several attempts were made by the United States of America towards such type of exploration, bypassing the International Treaty on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space, which was signed at the UN in 1967, and which is still in force. However, around 2005 and 2006, a package of documents and the US Space Security Doctrine began to be developed, which provided for not just military space exploration, but a complete monopoly on space. This immediately raised some questions from many countries, primarily Russia, on the basis of what one country wants to rule the entire cosmos. I am not saying that it is immoral or simply impossible. I am not talking about how much money is needed for this. Although the possible effect of introducing such an idea, of pulling off such a plan, would certainly pay off all costs. The game is worth the candle, because the control of the whole Earth from space is, perhaps, the very world domination. And how does the cosmos itself relate to this? How could it relate to this? No one answered this question. After 2008, when the US Doctrine on Space Security was published, and for the first time in history it was signed by two officials, the Secretary of Defense and the Director of the CIA, even at the diplomatic level, even at the UN level, the US began to behave quite differently. They began to look for any inconsistencies in the 1967 Treaty on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space. For example, in the part about the neutral status of the Moon, etc., and all the provisions of the treaty that everyone had previously treated calmly, for some reason, began to be revised. And the further the more. In recent years, some provisions have been completely ignored. For example, in 2021, a conference on security, including on security of space, was held in Geneva. The meeting went on for a very long time. Finally, the Russian delegation proposed to sum up the results, and the resolution was signed by all the participating countries of the conference, including the USA. It was late at night, and in the morning, the US withdrew its signature. That was in 2021. And, for example, at the end of 2022, when the issue of adopting a resolution on the non-placement of weapons in outer space was raised at a meeting of the UN General Assembly, 120 countries voted yes, 50, led by the United States, voted no, and 4 countries abstained. 50 countries, led by the USA, are the whole Anglo-Saxon world, so to speak. The resolution was adopted by a majority of votes, but the resolution is not a law. When there was the 75th anniversary of the UN, in the days of COVID, when everyone was working by video link, our president, Vladimir Putin, at the end of his welcoming speech, claimed that Russia is advocating for the conclusion of a comprehensive treaty on the ban of the placement of any weapons in space, and on the ban of the use of force or the threat of the use of force against space objects. A wise choice of words. The ban of the placement of weapons in outer space and the ban of the threat of the use of force should be attributed not only to natural or artificial, but to all space objects. This is very wise, but it contradicts the aspirations of the United States. As soon as the weapons issue reaches outer space, we begin to bring into space the most negative things that are in people: hatred, lies, selfishness, lust for power, aggression. All human vices begin to intrude the outer space, because the cosmos is alive. This is a kind of living tissue consisting of ether or of atoms, it doesn't matter, but the cosmos is alive. And we begin to try to introduce some kind of painful substance into it, which in general is associated with death, with violence and death. In the name of what? In the name of monopoly. We are spreading our colonial habits to the cosmos, all of humanity. We must never place weapons in outer space, regardless. By the way, a woman activist, a very well-known public figure of the USA, Carol Sue Rosin, told us about this in due time. She was Wernher von Braun's spokesperson until his death. And in the mid-70s, he told her about the plans to seize world power, the fourth stage of which is to unite all the forces, all the resources of humanity, in order to repel a possible invasion of aggressive aliens. And now this plan, which Wernher von Braun called the last card, is being played. It is played out due to the fact that on July 15, 2022, the Pentagon created an entire department for the investigation and study of anomalies in all environments, including UFOs, in order to determine the degree of their possible threat to people. We are standing on the edge of a precipice, and in order to force us to make this deadly step over the edge, certain results can be announced, according to my calculations, in no more than 6 months. When an official body, the Ministry of Defense, with the support of the National Intelligence Office and with the support of NASA, that is absolutely legit state structures, declare that UFOs represent a tremendous threat, and then they offer the whole world to combine resources, power, money, weapons, armies, minerals, territories, human resources, etc. That is, to give, in fact, all sovereignty into one hand. This is the seizure of world power. Maybe I got a little carried away. Thank you for your attention.